Hello everyone, it's McMath back here. Let's get started. So, last video I did terms, coefficients, variables, and constants, explained what they are, kind of what they look like in an equation or an expression. Let's have a quick quiz to kind of summarize everything that we learned and see a real world kind of example. So, I know on first sight this may look a little bit scary. Lots of kind of weird numbers, lots of weird stuff going on, but don't worry, we'll work this through step by step, okay? So our first question is, for the equation below, this is the equation right here, list all of its, so we have terms, we have coefficients, that's just shorthand for coefficients, didn't want to write it out. This is variables, again shorthand, and then constants right here. Okay, so let's get started. Very first and easiest thing we can do is divide the equation up into terms. Now, as I explained in the previous video, terms are basically anything divided by any symbol. So say, for example, it could be divided by, so this will be a term, this will be a term, this will be a term, this, and this right here, right? So term, let's just write it down quickly, just so we kind of understand in our thought process. Term, it's divided by, or I should say separated, because divided could be a mathematical operation. So let's say separated by any symbol. So in brackets, I'll put plus, minus, divide, or multiply, or equals. That also kind of divides up the, that also kind of separates the terms. So there you are. So we have it using that logic. We have plus sign here. So that means that before we have a term, 20x cubed, right? Okay, moving forward, another plus sign. Before that, separate term from this. These aren't the same terms because there's a symbol in front of them, right? So then we have 1 over 6, x to the 5. Okay, going forward, plus another 1.25, another term, equals, okay, that also separates it. It's not a plus, but it also separates it. We have 9x, okay, cool. Another plus sign, separates, so we know this is a separate term. And then 2, whatever's going on here, 2 times 1 over 2 times x squared. We'll get to that. But in any case, they're together. So actually this means one term, right? Because there's no symbol separating it. So it is one term, technically. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total terms in this equation, right? So I'll just write a quick 5 right here. Okay, moving on. Next, we have coefficients, right? So you guys remember in the previous video I talked about this. A coefficient is basically a number that precedes or comes before a variable, right? Now, a variable is just this, right? It's an x cubed, x to the 5, x, just x to the 2, right? It doesn't matter really the power. We'll learn about powers actually upcoming soon, but for right now, we don't really need to know that. Let's just understand x is a variable, right? It's changing. We don't know what it is. It can be whatever it can be really to satisfy this equation, right? Because we have a plus sign here. So this side must equal that side. But if you notice, we have x's right here, right? But anyway, the coefficient is just the number that comes before it, right? It's kind of like a little buddy, right? Buddy with the variable. He's just friends with him, you know? He's just cool with him. He's always there with him, you know? He's always there to support him. So yeah, think about coefficient as kind of like the friend of variable, you know what I mean? They're inseparable. And just so you guys know, say for example, I have an easy equation like x plus 5 equals 6, say for example, right? Very easy equation. You might think on first glance that the x has no coefficient, right? Actually, it's just notation. We just write an x, right? X plus 5 equals 6. But technically, there is a 1 in front of this x, right? Because if there wasn't a 1 in front of this x, and it would be like 0, this x wouldn't exist. 0 times anything is just 0, right? So it can't be 0 up here. So don't get tripped up by that. That could be a trick question. Just know that there is a 1 in front of this x. It does have a coefficient. Every variable ever has a coefficient. It might be hidden because of this, but it does have a coefficient. So just remember that, guys. But pretty much, right? In our case, it isn't really 1 here ever, right? So here we have x, but then we have a 20 before it. Cool. That's x's buddy in this case, so it's a 20. That's the coefficient for this term right here, right? This is a term. This is a coefficient. We're getting a bit more in detail now. Okay, moving on. 1 over 6. Okay, that's fraction form. We could easily convert that into decimal form. Doesn't really matter. It's valid. There are multiple ways of representing the same number, right? 1 over 6 is the coefficient of x to the 5. That works too. Doesn't matter. It's the same number as, it's the same type of number as 20. Numerically, it exists. It's rational, so we can put it like that. Now, 1.25. Is this a coefficient? I really hope you guys are saying no. Because if you look at it, where's the x, right? This guy's all alone. He doesn't have a buddy. He's just by himself. 1.25. Nothing. So then this guy doesn't qualify as a coefficient, okay? So we don't count him as a coefficient. Moving on. 9x, right? Okay, this guy's got a buddy. His name is 9. Cool. Now, what's going on over here? We already said this is one term, right? So as soon as you know that it's one term, you know that it's going to be one coefficient. That's just a rule. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how it works. Because a coefficient is just a number, but anything that's together in one term means that you can simplify it, or you can evaluate it a bit to simplify it. You know what I mean? So in this case, I have 2 times 1 over 2 times x squared, right? But, and that may seem very confusing. You might be asking yourself, well, is the 1 over 2 the coefficient, or is the 2, or what's going on? Like, well, think about it. The 2 is being multiplied by the 1 over 2, right? And this is one term. So realistically, we can get this to be of this form where it's just one number, right? Because like the 9x, right? Think about it, 9x. I could write it as 18 over 2, right? 18 over 2x. That works as well because it's one term, and if I can simplify it, it becomes 9x, right? So think about it this way. If I evaluate this, 2 multiplied by 1, right? Think about it. Let me write it out really quickly. Let's just say 1 over 2 x squared, right? So let's evaluate it like this. So the 2 is going to be over a 1, right? Because it's just a 2 multiplied by 1 over 2, right? What does that get us? That is going to be, so the 2 comes up here. 2 times 1 is 2. Divided by 1 times 2 is 2, right? Therefore, that's just 1. So therefore, the 2 times 1 over 2 x squared simplifies to just 1 x squared. Right? Does that make sense? It's because it's one term and we're able to manipulate it to become of this form, right? We want it to be of this form. We don't want it to be this. This is confusing. We don't, this is weird. This isn't complete. This is complete. We like this, right? So then the question really becomes really easy because then we can rewrite 1 over 2 x squared equals 1. I'll just write 1 x squared. Later on, you guys will just, realize that it's 1 and not have to write it. But since we're kind of learning about it, I'll write it. But it's just 1 x squared, right? Easy. So what's the coefficient? 1. Easy. It's got a buddy named 1. Cool. Easy. So then, what do we have? We have 20. 1 over 6. Doesn't matter if it's given to you in fraction form, decimal form, or this kind of whole number form. It doesn't matter. They're all numbers, and it all counts. They're all coefficients. This guy, not really a coefficient, right? Because he doesn't have a variable attached to him, which is fine. He's called something different, and we'll get to that. 9x, obviously the 9 is the coefficient here. And then this weird thing, we simplified it because it's one term, and we got it to be 1 x squared, right? So the coefficient is 1. Okay, does that make sense? I really hope it does. But if you guys have some other questions, just leave them down in the comments below and I'll be happy to answer them. So next part of this question though, we're going to talk about the variable, right? So I already got into the variable. The variable is just the unknown, right? That's what's changing. We don't know what it really is. It's just some letter that you could input a number to it and then get a result, but it's always changing, right? It could change. That's the point of a variable, right? So pretty easy, right? So whenever you have a coefficient, right, you know you have a variable because the definition of coefficient is a variable's buddy. So if you know you have a coefficient, you know you have a buddy variable, you know? So let's take a look at this. 20x cubed, right? We know this is the coefficient. We know this is one term. Therefore, we know that this is the variable, right? Because this is the coefficient. He's friends with the variable. Easy. So the variable is x cubed. This case right here, one term, right? We have 1 over 6, right? That's a coefficient. Since we know that's a coefficient, we know that this is a variable because a coefficient always comes before a variable. Okay? X to the 5. Now, this one right here. I don't see an x here. What does that mean? That means that it's not a variable either. Because a variable is denoted as some sort of letter, you know what I mean? Like an X or a W or a Z or an R or whatever you want. Where's the letter here? All I see is 1.25. I know what 1.25 is. I know what that is. There's nothing variable about it, right? There's nothing changing about it. That's what variable means, changing. Nothing changing about this. This is always going to be 1.25. Therefore, not a variable, right? It's something else, but it's not a variable. Next up, 9x, right? Easy. We know this is the coefficient. We know this is the variable, x. Easy. Next one. We know this is the coefficient. We simplified it down to 1x squared. 1 is the coefficient. X squared is the variable. Easy. Easy, guys. You guys are going to ace all your quizzes. Easy. Okay, cool. So that means we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 total variables in this. Different types of variables in this equation. Cool. Easy, right? And then finally, let's take a look at the constants, right? So what is a constant? Think about variables and constants. If you think about them, they're the complete opposite, right? So if you can just understand that a variable changes and is variable, then you'll easily understand what a constant is. A constant is something that stays the same always. It never varies. It never changes. It's always just there. It's always just there, you know, chilling. Always, like, just by itself, like, you know, it's always the same. So let's take a look. Which one of these is constants, right? 20. If I input 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, this result will change, right? This variable, let that equal 1, right? 1 to the 3, and we'll learn about this later, it's just 1, right? 2 to the 3, we'll learn about this later, is 8. That changes, right? This result changes. This is variable. This is varying, right? Depending on what we're inputting. What about if x equals 2? This is 8, right? This is whatever. Also input 2 to the 5. What happens here? Nothing happens here. It's just 1.25. It's always 1.25. It's on its own, you know? It's not affected by anyone. It's just there, you know? So regardless of whether x equals 5, 10, a million, it doesn't matter. 1.25 is always going to be 1.25. It's the way it is. So, using that logic, right? We cannot have a variable and a constant together in one term. If we do, that just means that the constant you think you're calling the constant is actually a coefficient, right? If you guys are starting to like see kind of like the reasoning and the patterns behind it all. So just try to remember these like key definitions and it'll become really easy, right? How you can, you know, subdivide every equation and understand what's going on, right? Because this is going to be very important later on. So then, let's take a look. 20x cubed, that's changing, right? I could have 1, I could have 2, doesn't matter. It's changing. 1 over 6, doesn't matter, it's a fraction. X to the 5, it changes. Therefore, it's not a constant. 1.25, I don't see an x. Does it change when x changes? Nope, it doesn't. It stays the same, 1.25. Finally, we found a categorization. This guy is a constant. He's always going to be the same. Next one, 9x. I see an x. That means it's going to change. Okay, simple. 2 times 1 over 2. Oh my gosh. That's just 1. No need to panic. That's just 1. X squared. I see an x. That's all we need to see. It's going to change. Therefore, the only constant we have is this 1.25 right here. Okay? Great. Well, I hope you guys learned some new stuff. Don't get tripped up by these special like forms of numbers like the 1 over 6 or the 1.25 or the whole numbers. They're all the same thing. They're all the same as in coefficients, constants. Nothing changes depending on its form. You know what I mean? This can still be a constant if it's by itself. Right? Like it doesn't matter how it's written. It's just as long as it has a variable or it's by itself or whatever. And the terms, right? It's just divided or separated by symbols, right? Easy. Thank you guys for watching, and in the next video we'll be going over powers, because I feel like that is a very important topic to go over. So we'll finally uncover what these kind of like numbers mean, right? So like the 5 or the 3. So stay tuned, guys. I'll see you around. Take care. Bye.